Josh has over 27 years of experience in the medical industry, having worked at Physio Control, Access Cardio Systems, Philips Healthcare, and now at Interspect Medical. Since the age of 18, he has been thrust into cardiac resuscitation and the benefits of CPR AED use on individuals. He has personally been involved in key medical director leadership across the West Coast around successful AED programs and in helping to improve systemic responses. Having a family and 3 kids has helped him progressively educate the younger generation of the importance of CPRs and AEDs. Josh loves what he does and encourages all to join the fight against sudden cardiac arrest. And with that, I am now going to turn the time over to Josh.
Thanks, Brandon. I appreciate that. I am always impressed by the, everything that the Utah Safety Council does. They've kind of got a niche in everything, which is fantastic. Today, my focus is obviously going to be talking about the AEDs in the workplace. I think everyone's probably heard by now or seen on TV what has happened with some of the NFL players. And if you haven't been staying close to that, I'm going to give, during this presentation, I'll give some more information to that extent so you can get some of the details. What I was planning on going through here was sudden cardiac arrest, which is also known as SCA. When you call 911, what actually happens. And then we're going to talk a little bit about, the best AEDs. I always get this question over my 27 years. Josh, what is the best AED? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to talk about what some of the AED brands are doing. Technology today has advanced. Some of these devices are not only doing their own self-testing, but they're doing so much more. And we're going to go into more details with that as well. And then we're going to end with some of the awareness. I'm hoping that everyone takes away from today's presentation that, I'm sure everyone's traveled on a flight or gone to an airport at some point in their life. The AEDs are present in those places. They're in cabinets. The more awareness that we can create, the more lives we can, potentially save. So, with that, I want to kind of jump into this, what is SCA, sudden cardiac arrest? So, a lot of times I get this question that comes up. People always ask, "Hey, Josh, what's a heart attack? What's sudden cardiac arrest? Do they intermingle? Does one make the other one happen?" So I always kind of put it in the layman terms here. A heart attack is someone that essentially still has a pulse, is still responsive, and probably still breathing. It could probably even drive themselves to the hospital. It could be having a mild heart attack right now. My arm starts to get real tight. My back starts to kind of hurt, but I'm still breathing and I'm still conscious. Those are the two things. Sudden cardiac arrest is what, if anybody's been paying attention, is just like what happened to Damar Hamlin. Essentially, you're there for a second and then you stop talking and everything goes down and you're out cold. So what happens? No pulse, you're unresponsive, and you're not breathing. That's the difference. So I always kind of like to lay this on the line for people so they understand those two differences. A heart attack can become sudden cardiac arrest. If you kind of have those mild heart attack symptoms and you're kind of like, no, I worked out today, no big deal, and you've delayed those for a couple of days, that could eventually become a sudden cardiac arrest. But a sudden cardiac arrest can't become a heart attack. Once you're down, you're down. And the only way to effectively get someone out of a sudden cardiac arrest is with an AED. An AED actually stands for Automated External Defibrillator, if you wanted to know. The reason why, say automated is because all these devices will walk and talk you from the beginning to the end on what to do. You can't make a mistake. You can't trick it either. You can't press the shock button and say, I want to shock Jim. I don't like Jim. It will not let you. So the nice thing about AEDs, and that's why they're in the public, is that they're so easy to use. And what you probably saw on the field over with the NFL football player Damar Hamlin is an AED was there, they shocked him, and they actually did CPR. So I always say if you have an AED and you're doing decent CPR, we got a really good chance of survival. This is kind of what it looks like with sudden cardiac arrest. We call it ventricular fibrillation. You can also go into ventricular tachycardia. Those are kind of the two most common things that could happen. It's where your heart kind of starts racing. So a misconception that you always hear on TV is, right, you have cardiac arrest, your heart stops. That's actually not true. Your heart starts to fibrillate. It is rapidly firing, and the four chambers of the heart are uncoordinated. So it's trying to pump blood, but it can't. It's so uncoordinated that nothing's happening. So if we can't pump any blood, we can't get blood to our brain. So what happens? We go unconscious. So the key is that when we're in that fibrillation and we're sitting there rapidly firing, the only way to stop that electrical activity is with a shock. A shock actually stops that chaotic rhythm, and what we're hoping will happen is the heart will essentially come back to a normal sinus rhythm. So the heart has its own electrical system. The key is for us is just to get them out of the chaos quickly, so then we can have good CPR and we can keep all the limbs and everything alive. The big thing for me in understanding this is understanding kind of the symptoms that you would see out there. So like I mentioned earlier, if you start to feel pain in your center of your back, your left arm starts to feel tight, your chest starts to feel like you've got a rock on it, you might start to be having a mild heart attack. That might be a time to drive yourself to the hospital, because you don't want that to progress and become sudden cardiac arrest. So I've kind of mentioned it a couple times. I've talked about the NFL player. The reason I keep bringing this up, because it's the biggest awareness I've seen in years. This is called commotio cordis, you guys. If you've never seen or heard of commotio cordis, what that basically is it's a blunt trauma to your chest, and it's right when your heart is depolarizing. So right when the heart rhythm's going down. And when that happens, it allows the heart to skip a beat. And I hate to kind of mention this to everyone, but our heartbeat, beats 100,000 times a day. But if it skips once, you can go into cardiac arrest. It can happen anytime, any place, and to anyone. So I always mention this to people, because we have these misconceptions. Oh, no, it's not going to be me. I'm in great shape. I'm a marathon runner. I'm great. We have kids from ages of 13 to 18, and the last 8 years, that average has been about 9,000 kids have died of sudden cardiac arrest. 9,000. Think of that. It's crazy when we have a potential cure in an AED. So when you're thinking about AED, automated external defibrillator, and you're thinking about the usage of that device, I just want to really make this clear. It is for the lay person, the untrained user. It's designed for us in the public. You cannot make a mistake. If you had a device, all you would have to do is turn it on, and it starts walking and talking you through from beginning to end. I put down here on the thing, if no one knew what CPR stood for, which is cardiopulmonary resuscitation. The key with an AED and CPR, why those two in tandem make great success, is because you think about it, the heart and your body, it's electrical and it's plumbing, right? We've got to stop electrical chaos to allow it to reboot. And what we're doing when that heart's kind of faintly rebooting is with CPR, we're trying to get the body to push more blood out into all the limbs to keep the body alive, and obviously the brain. So I mentioned this. Hopefully this graphic gives you a real good idea. I'm based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. I can tell you guys, I get it all the time. People will say, Josh, it's not going to happen to me. This is never going to happen. I work out, I eat healthy, this and that. I will always point to all the people I've met over my years, from 13-year-olds to 18-year-olds that have been in my when I was working for the manufacturer. We actually had presentations from kids that have actually had sudden cardiac arrest, that actually survived because of an AED, and then later they found out that those people needed an implantable, so essentially an AED internally in their body. The sudden cardiac arrest is a big meaning. He does not care who you are. It will come after male, female, young, old. It does not have any stereotypes. So the key is being able to recognize symptoms. If we can recognize symptoms, we got a better chance. Now, I will mention this because I always like to. Does drinking, smoking, being overweight, all that help? No, it doesn't help. But the key is that there's no diagnostic that has told us that, those are keys to, causing sudden cardiac arrest. There have been, if you ever do a Google chat or go on YouTube, you can click in AED saves, and you will see from soccer players to kids playing volleyball that are literally standing there for 1 second and then just go completely down and hit their heads right on the ground, smack. And they're in fantastic shape. So I just want to make sure everyone is, really hammering this in your head that this thing it has been around for years. It is something that the only way to cure it essentially is with a shock quickly and with decent CPR. So I've talked about this with this slide with the heart attack and the plumbing. I'm just going to throw this up because I wanted people to kind of see some of the, different symptoms to kind of look out for. These are things that we're always trying to address in my field. We're always trying to address it with, from the schools that we deal with, to the casinos, to the airports, to the, the ones I work with, like a Legionnaire, and even like the MGM. So the key is here that the more awareness that we provide, the better chance that we have having someone actually do something and help and actually save a life. This is a great graphic here, and I hope this really gets all the points across. So if you take house fires, cancer, automobile accidents, and you total all those up, that doesn't even come close to what sudden cardiac arrest does every single year. It kills an average of 365,000 people to upwards of 425,000, because it obviously changes every year. But the key is that, that is a very, very high number, and we have a potential cure. We just got to get people to take it. The key is right now, the national success rate from sudden cardiac arrest, this should probably disappoint everybody. It's 8%. When I started, it was 5%. And I've been doing this 27 years. We've been putting AEDs everywhere. We've been trying to train, educate. Just tells you that there's just so many other places that we haven't gotten to, out in the public. The key is that that's typically where this is happening. And obviously people, whether you're at your home or, for instance, you're at a casino and you're sleeping in the bed. I will bring this up as an example. I get a lot of calls from my customer, the MGM, where we've had deaths actually up in the rooms, and loved ones that were sleeping next to it. That person said, no, they were snoring. But people don't realize that sometimes when that happens, when you think it's a snore, it's actually not. It's actually what we call the last breath. It's where your lungs are being squeezed and the last breath is coming out of your body. So they've probably gone into sudden cardiac arrest. It is something that just happens. There's no stopping it outside of once they go into that cardiac arrest, noticing it quick and then implementing an AED. This slide is very particular to me because you can imagine 27 years of doing this, all the people I've talked to in regards to responses. I have some facilities that say, the fire department, they're 2 minutes away. They're literally right in our backyard, so to speak. The first thing I'll mention about that is, even if they were in your backyard or next door, when you call 911, it goes to dispatch. Dispatch then goes to the closest person or agency. And what happens from there is, if it is in your backyard, they cannot, per their protocols, they cannot just run over to you. They have to follow a protocol that says, okay, now we got to load the truck, grab all our stuff, drive to the front of your building, unload, take all our stuff, and then go into your building. You can see that takes time. Nothing against fire and EMS. They're doing everything that they possibly can. But the one thing that they can't do is, and I'm going to give a Back to the Future reference, they can't go back in time unless they have a DeLorean, which, quite frankly, I don't think anybody has. But if you do, call me because I would like one. But the key is back to the going back in time to change all this is the only way to actually justify and actually changing the actual success rate. The average time on a 911 call is about 10.6 minutes. You're going to see from this next graph that I show you that 10.6 minutes doesn't give us a really good chance of survival. I have ridden on calls with fire and EMS before. I can tell you they can't bring this up, but when we get dispatched, call in and they say unresponsive, loved one is doing CPR and an AED is present, it feels, and I say it feels like the car moves faster, that the ambulance moves fast, because they feel like they got a potential chance of survival. When we get the dispatch call where it says unresponsive, loved one doesn't feel comfortable doing CPR, no AED present, I can tell you it's somewhat of a downer, because a lot of those guys have been on those calls and they know what they're going to be doing, which is CPR for a long period of time and trying to get someone out of a rhythm that is probably faint. So the key for us is, one, getting AEDs out there, and two, cutting this time down so we get better success. This is it right here. You have sudden cardiac arrest. Imagine having a stopwatch in your hand and clicking it. If you can respond in under 3 minutes, for instance, you have an AED in your facility and you can respond in under 3 minutes and deliver a shock, look at your chances of survival, almost 75% or better. It's just tremendous. If we don't have an AED and we're not even doing CPR and we're just waiting for fire and EMS, look at it, 10 minutes, we got less than 10% chance. So in all honesty, I always tell people, having an AED on site is the best thing you could do, because you're giving someone a chance. It may not save their life, but it will give them the best opportunity to be saved. So I mentioned earlier about the best AED. I get smiling about this because it's funny. We got all the AEDs out there, and there's probably 10 different versions that you can get, and I will show a picture of them all so you guys can see. But for me, because I know it's time related with sudden cardiac arrest, I can tell you, for me, it's always the closest one to me. I don't care what brand, what it is. Well, if it can defibrillate and do a shock, that's the one I want, because I know that time is the only big impact here. If I can get an AED on to my chest faster than I could any other one, that's the one I want. The other one is AEDs obviously save lives. I try to tell people this all the time. If you're buying an AED for your facility, the one thing you should also think about, especially now, that's great. It's fantastic to have it in your facility. What do you have at your home? What are we doing to protect our families that do other things or do activities? I have carried an AED in my car for almost the full length of 27 years. I think I probably have had it for at least 24. And I will tell you, I've deployed my device 3 times. And we've had 2 saves. The key is with these devices is they make a difference. Now, I think about that 3 deployments in over a 27-year period. I think to myself, wow, that's not that many. It's not, but I think about those people that were involved in those instances. If they didn't have me around, or if I didn't have that device, what would it have been like? Now, I've also deployed my device many other times where it wasn't used for sudden cardiac arrest, but I still brought it out. My daughter plays flag football here in Las Vegas. 2 girls had collided, hit heads. One was conscious and was talking to us. The other one was not, and I didn't see too much movement. I ran and grabbed my AED, and that was the first thing I think of. I got to be there just in case something happens. And luckily, she started mumbling, started talking to us, started coming through. The other one was when I was on a freeway and a truck had actually tipped in front of me, and I was trying to get the guy out of the car. And I can just tell you there, first thing I went for is in my car was a tire iron to break his glass to pull him out, because I couldn't climb to the top of it. And what I found in my car was my AED. And I said, well, these things are built to be indestructible. So the first thing I did is, well, let's do the test. So I took it, smashed the glass, got him out, and pulled him out. So there's other instances where an AED has been very, very helpful. Now, being connected to the Safety Council, I can tell you guys they do a gambit of things, but the AEDs is a big portion as well. They have access to all the devices, new and certified pre-owned as well. What I'm hoping from this presentation is you feel the little bit of my energy kind of reflecting on you, which is, we got to make a difference. I mean, there's too much stuff going on in the world where AEDs, we've been talking about this since the 80s, 1980s, and now we're in 2023. These things should be everywhere, and everyone should know what they do and how they do it. I personally believe that they make a difference in a lot of people's lives, and we could probably line up a lot of young ones from that age from 13 to 18 where an AED was deployed, shocked, and got them back. And if they didn't have it, they wouldn't be here today. So these are kind of the manufacturers. You got Philips, Zoll Medical, who now owns Cardiac Science. They purchased them. Stryker, who now owns Physio Control, my old company, and they also own HeartSign. And then there's Defib Tech. Those are kind of your players in the AED world. There are a couple newer ones that are coming out. Some that are going to be, a little bit different. The key is that, once again, the best AED is the closest one. Here is the picture of many of the different devices. Now, I'll get back to it, and I'm going to keep repeating it because I like to try to hammer home points. If one of these are in my office and I went down, that's the one that wants to be used. It doesn't matter which one it is. As long as one of them is being deployed and actually doing a defibrillation on me, that's what I need. All these devices are successful. Even the older ones, they can still manage to defibrillate and shock. The key is obviously, if you see something, do something. It's very similar to what we hear in the airport. If you see something, say something. AEDs, you can't harm them. I can't sit there and press a shock button right there on one of those devices and trick it and say, no, let's shock them. Don't like them. It will not defibrillate. It will only shock someone that needs it. So once those pads are on the chest, it's going to do an analysis and determine if they need it. And if it doesn't, it's going to coach you on CPR. How terrific is that? So I mentioned the smart AEDs. What I can tell you on, these devices are some of the newer technology that's come out. So all AEDs have a function where they're doing their own self-testing. It's low maintenance. You don't have to do much to these. If there's a pad and a battery, usually those have expiration dates. The Safety Council track those, alert you prior to, so you're always staying in the green, meaning green is good. But there are some newer devices that now what they'll do is they're commuting through Wi-Fi, and it's something that you can log into your computer, and it actually will tell you things are good instead of having to walk by it. So that's some of the technology that's coming that essentially people are looking for, because if you think about it, during the COVID era, what happened? All of us kind of started working at home, so we didn't have eyes on devices. So what the manufacturers started to do was to create technology that would allow us functions where if we have smaller teams to manage a device, then we want to, and they have 20 sites. I want to have a device that I could log in my computer and I could see all 20 devices in the green saying pads and batteries are good. And that's the best thing ever. Most devices, a pad has either a 2 to 3 year expiration, and a battery, typically a 4-year expiration installed. So, people ask this all the time when I get the device and I've activated my device. Josh, is there anything else to do? Nope, that's it. And I know it's crazy because you've spent the money to buy a device and put it on a wall, but the idea is we're hoping you never have to use it. But whether it's tomorrow, the next day, 4 weeks from today, 5 years, 10 years, when it's called upon to be used, I will tell you, it gives someone a much better chance of survival, and more than likely, it's probably going to save their life. So this is the last thing I kind of wanted to end on before we go into like any questions. I'll be happy to answer anything. And there's no dumb question. I've heard them all, so don't hesitate. The big thing I went to is I'm always looking at kind of where awareness is and how things are going in the public's eye. I've talked to many different people from AHA to the Safety Council and others. The amount of awareness that football player Damar Hamlin has caused has created such a fury of people saying, I'm no longer on the fence. I'm jumping in, I'm getting a device. And not only am I doing that, I'm getting one for my home or to keep in my car all the time. Is probably the biggest change I've ever seen. It has caused something that I never thought I would see, which is having this highlighted awareness that we haven't seen in the industry since AEDs first came out. Let's just be honest. That this thing has really driven it. Now, I want to mention this because a lot of people don't know this. I respect the fact that we're highlighting Damar Hamlin and we're doing all this, but what people don't realize, that day that Damar Hamlin went down, because sudden cardiac arrest kills 365,000 people a year. That's 1,000 people a day. The one thing we didn't highlight was the 999 other people that died that day because of sudden cardiac arrest. So once again, it's great that we highlight Damar Hamlin and we get the awareness out there, but we're also kind of missing the big picture. This is happening everywhere, and it's to all people. It's not just our star athletes. It's a big time and a big chance to actually make a difference in our community, and kind of pair up with the fire and EMS. Trust me, those guys, when they hear that you've got an AED or you've learned CPR, they get excited about it because they know they've got better chances in those areas to have survival later down the road and have someone actually have a good quality of life. So I want to thank everybody for being on this call. I appreciate it. I probably went over my time a little bit, but I get excited about this stuff, and I really do believe in what we do. I kind of put this up there, the plan, prepare, and respond. Where to place AEDs. If you ever have questions about it, Utah Safety, Brandon Stone can help you out with that. Preparing, training on CPR and AED procedures that you should do, every year or every quarter. There are videos, in-service videos for all the AEDs, and they're all online that you can literally use all the time when you buy a device to keep it refreshed in your brain. The last thing is respond. If you have a device, don't hesitate to use it. And we say this to all the schools that we work with. When it comes to deploying the device, they've asked us, well, what if we come across a kid that's in PE and fainted? Deploy the AED. You don't know if he fainted. So once you get there, you can determine that. And if you've screamed and said, hey, are you okay? Hey, are you okay? And you're not getting any response, the AED is being deployed. I'm taking the pads out. I'm putting it on his chest. I'm slamming those babies on there to make sure they stick. He's still unresponsive, and I'm still not getting anything. The AED's on. It's going to tell me if he needs a shock. And if he needs a shock, we're going to hit it. And if it doesn't need a shock, it's going to coach me through CPR. It'll actually say, if needed, start CPR. And then, many of them will have a metronome, a doink, doink, doink noise to follow for your compressions. So these things are super smart. It's like having a paramedic in a box. So I hopefully I've kind of downplayed the fact that AEDs are just super friendly, easy to use, and the information part about, getting more AEDs into our communities. So with that, Brandon, I appreciate the time. I will take any questions that anybody has.
We really appreciate you coming on, Josh. A lot of really great information. I do have a couple questions. So my first question is, can I get in trouble for using a defibrillator? Can I do it wrong? Can I get in trouble? And can I get in trouble if I don't use it?
Ooh, those are good questions. So if you have a defibrillator, I will tell you, so right now, if you have a defibrillator, yes, you do want to respond with it. Could there be liability if you don't respond with a defibrillator? Yes, there could be. There's always an open door for that. And the reason why I say that is because if you have a life-saving tool, and for instance, if I walked into your facility and I went down, the first thing my wife would do is say, AEDs have been out since the 80s. Why don't you have one? And that would be highlighted in that lawsuit. Now, if you deployed the AED and it didn't save my life, there is no lawsuit. You did everything possible. There's not been one lawsuit to date that has actually occurred for that. And then the opposite side is if you deployed the AED, saved my life, and everything went well, you just think of it this way. If I was a customer or if I was an employee, I'm more likely to be excited about working at that position, knowing that we have that piece of equipment, because now I get to go see my family. That to me is pretty exciting. So quite frankly, there have been zero lawsuits when it comes to uses of AEDs versus there have been lawsuits where someone doesn't have an AED. So I have no AED on my site. You're more liable because, quite frankly, the AEDs have been out there for so long, and it's as similar as having a fire extinguisher. Hopefully I answered that good enough.
No, that was great. And if any of the people online watching have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll get those questions to Josh. I did want to ask, does someone having a heart attack need an AED?
Great question. Could you, I mean, and I've heard this many times. So if I had my device and I was having a mild heart attack, I might hook it up to me. I probably would while I was driving myself to the hospital. And the reason why is because I'd want it to, analyze. Now I'm gonna step back there. I'm probably not going to drive myself, probably have my wife drive. So if I do go in, we don't crash the car. If I do have a sudden cardiac arrest. So the key is that I would probably hook it up just to monitor me while I'm going to the hospital. And then once I get there, obviously I could take it off, but I would want to be able to protect myself just in case, because remember, it's only going to shock if it needs to.
Outstanding. Appreciate that. We have had a request. Would you be comfortable sharing your slides with one of our attendees, or me sharing them?
Yeah, Brandon, all the slides, feel free to. So, I mean, it's open knowledge, and I'll mention this too. If anyone's ever, want to get more details, and the funnest thing you could do is, you want to use Google to your advantage. Type into Google AED and saves, or AED law enforcement, or AED and public. You will see a laundry list of links come up from not only saves from police officers to schools to gyms. It is probably one of the most inspiring thing. And then because typically we're seeing more saves than we are deaths. And the key is that this is something that, once again, creates awareness.
We really appreciate your time, Josh. It's been terrific. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. I appreciate it.
With that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this month's Start with Safety. Just a quick reminder that we'll be back next month, March 1st, with Robert Gardner. He'll be talking about the cost of safety. So make sure to tune in for that. Yeah, if nobody has any questions, we'll see you next month. Thank you very much.